can just hold up the Family in Six Tones, and I can hold up Monkey Bridge. And so I don't, the Lotus in the Storm is behind me. That's more than I could manage on one little screen. So anyway, I would just like to say thank you all for coming tonight. This is an additional session of the professional learning community, and we really appreciate you all taking the time to, I know everybody's busy and you're preparing for the exam, so it's really a special, I'm especially grateful. Oh, there's Kate Cordes. If you can let Kate in, it would be great.
I did as a panelist.
And Kate was saying she may be joining from her car, so she may not want to be on video. Not sure. Anyway, we have had a lovely time with this group of people. We started in December, right? It was December. And we have been meeting every 2 weeks. And we've done all sorts of interesting things. And I so appreciate their cooperation and the fact that even during this time when they're Zooming all day long with their students, or at least some of them are back in class, that they've been kind enough to participate in this professional learning community. Our first session, we had a discussion of union with Robin's nephew and his co-author. And so we thought it would be nice to bookend it with a discussion with two other writers. And here we have Lan Cao and Harlan Margaret Van Cao, mother and daughter. And everyone has been, as we talked about it before, kind of amazed at the prospect of writing with their mother or their daughter or both. So I, especially given the time now, I'm really going to go through this pretty quickly and say, I'm going to tell a story, which is that in 1997 or 8, I don't remember which one, Lon, my daughter Meredith said to me, I read this great book and I think you'd really like it. And it's called Monkey Bridge. It's a novel. And so I got it. I occasionally listen to her, and she's a good reader. And I thought, boy, this is really something. It was a mother-daughter book. It was about Vietnam. I was absolutely intrigued. And so I was also teaching an APSI in New York, where Lon was a law professor at Brooklyn Law College. So I called her and I began with my usual thing. I love the book. I don't have any money. And I said, but I can guarantee some really interested and enthusiastic teachers. Would you be willing to come and talk to them? And she did. And not only did the teachers have a good time, but it was the start of a friendship, because that was long before Harlan was a glimmer in anybody's eyes. So we know how long ago that was. Anyway, Lon and I have stayed in touch, and she has moved around and was at Duke Law School for a while. Now she's in California, and she's a professor of international law. I think it's international law and economics, right? And Harlan is now a freshman at UCLA in enjoying the wonderful college experience of Zooming. I think many of us have children, friends, students in that same position. But Lon had kind of kept me up with what was going on, and she had told me about this situation that she and Harlan had done something for StoryCorps, and it was recorded, and it caught the eye and the ear of a publisher, and I'll let them tell you how that came about. So if the two of you wouldn't mind to talk just a little bit about the nature of the book and how it came about. And the book is Family in Six Tones. First of all, I encourage you to do Monkey Bridge in class. And if you go to Lon's website, you will see many, many teaching ideas. It's a very popular book, a beautiful book. But Family in Six Tones is a different book because it's told in alternating chapters. And the alternating chapters are precisely what the subtitle is, which is A Refugee Mother and American Daughter. So we will let the refugee mother and the American daughter explain how this came about. And I know they've done this many, many times, but if you could talk a little bit about it, and then we'll let people ask questions as they want. So, and thank you again. Welcome.
It's our pleasure. It's always great to spend some time with you, Renee. And I even remember your darling golden retriever.
Yeah. Yes, you knew an earlier one. You haven't met Lily, but you knew
the early one. So in 2015, or maybe it was 2016, and Harlan was about I can't
We do
remember
this
how
every
old she
time,
was,
like 12.
but 12 or something like that. We were approached by StoryCorps to do a very long interview. I think it was almost an hour long, and it was at a radio station. And StoryCorps is a program that I think records and commemorates sort of oral histories. So they were doing a program on newcomers to America or refugees. So Harlan and I went to this recording studio, and she asked me, it's question answer format. She came up with the interview questions, basically about growing up during the war and what it was like, and then leaving everything to come to the US. And that was either 2015 or 2016. And then we never heard anything more. But in 2018, StoryCorps came back to us because 2018 is the 50th anniversary of the Tet Offensive. Tet Offensive was in '68, which was a big turning point during the war, historically, both for Vietnam and for the United States. So StoryCorps said, why don't we take out the snippets of your long interview and the part that dealt specifically with the Tet Offensive and run it on NPR. So they ran that segment on NPR, which basically, again, has Harlan asking me questions about what it's like to grow up or to survive the Tet Offensive. And it ran. I never told my editor or my publisher about it, and they just heard it when they were on
Everybody
in the car.
heard it. My teachers, my English teachers and stuff, they heard it when I was in high school. I remember I was like sophomore year. It was like, at the time it was embarrassing because nothing like good had come of it yet for me, and I was always self-conscious. So they would say in the middle of class, like, oh, I heard your interview on the radio or something. And I thought like that was really cool actually. And then the Carol, right?
Yeah. My editor at the time, Carol, who's not my editor now because she left in order to write her own novel. She and the publisher, the president of Viking, heard it, and they approached us to do a mother-daughter book. They love the format, they love the flow, they love the conversational synergy between mother and daughter, and they thought it would be a great idea to have a book about a mother-daughter with the daughter's voice given kind of like equal weight as the child is at her current age. Because most mother-daughter memoirs are written when the mother is older and reflects back to her relationship with her mother. Yeah, when the daughter is older. Yeah, that's right. But now it's sort of a parallel story with the daughter right then and there talking back.
And I think because I was 15, so obviously like they had in mind originally that it's obviously like going to be war themed because the Tet Offensive interview, and like my mom has written a lot of books about the war. But I think because I was 15 and they knew I'd be writing it for like the next couple of years, it also turned into like coming of age. So you kind of see me grow up as I write it and like commenting on how I feel growing up. And while we talk about the war and like trauma and how that might affect parenting, it's also super personal because she comments on how I grow up too. So that's basically how it came about.
How was the writing? How did you manage to go? You've talked about the fact that you didn't really you had a little bit of an outline, a little bit of a plan, but then you weren't really editing one another, nor was Lon in charge, even though she's, the mother, the writer, the whatever, but this was really equally divided as I understand it.
So when they first, basically what happened was we were driving on the way to school and she said that either the agent or the publishing house had reached out and she wanted to know if I would be interested. And obviously like the idea of it sounded amazing to me. And we have very different personalities. I think she's more like trepidatious, I guess is the word, right? Isn't I use that right? And I was kind of just like, yeah, I'll do it. But they had to get an outline, which I assumed that they would kind of decide how the book would go, but they kind of wanted us to decide. So they gave us their general premise and we wrote out an outline together of exactly how we were going to write it. And then we gave them a sample. So that was the time where we, I think, worked the hardest together. And then after that, we went through phases. We first tried to write together, but that created a lot of friction, not only because I think obviously like moms and daughters will fight, but the book is about our life. So it's also like, it opens the door to a lot of discussions that may be old arguments or whatever. So we
New arguments.
New and old, yeah. Like new would turn into old. And remember this time when you did that, and then after that we wrote totally separate. And sometimes the editors and Penguin would see it before we saw each other's. And somehow, most of the time, it would actually work out fine.
We tried to, because I've never really seen her write creatively. And even though a memoir in many ways is not as creative and imaginative as fiction, it was still very creative in the sense that the writing was, it's not like a thesis, it's not like a paper with a thesis. So there was creativity within the confines of truth. Whereas with fiction, you're not bound by the confines of truth. But because I had never seen her do that sort of writing, I did want to see it at first before she turned it in. And I made suggestions and they were very explosively received. She really did not want to hear my suggestions. And I kept saying, I have students.
People pay me to
my students are very welcoming of my suggestions, but she was just very like, no. And I made some changes, which became also, she was very angry.
I think it was hard for us to look at each other's writing like objectively, like to say like what is best structurally. Like if she were to edit my stuff, I would have appreciated I don't even know if I would have appreciated this because I was very sensitive, but like a comma here, a period there.
Yeah, she wanted just like punctuation.
But because the subject was literally my mom, I think we took it really personally. Like if I said something and
she would write something like she screamed at me and I would write, she raised her voice. And that made her so mad that was one of our biggest fights because we were on the,
she had to get the agent to mediate our argument.
Our literary agent had to mediate.
Yeah.
Because I said, I don't even know if I want to do this because I didn't even want to do the project to begin with.
I think Harlan, you said you were interested in the project from the word go, and Lon was very reluctant.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think I have the stuff I have to talk about would be how I feel about growing up in America, which is less controversial because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And then the other part is me commenting on my mother. So that's kind of still like a safe zone, whereas I think there's more opportunity in her part for things that would make her nervous. And I've always been less of, I guess, I am self-conscious, but I think I'm more extroverted. So if you're self-conscious and extroverted, it kind of cancels out sometimes, especially in this project. I think the only reason why we had issues too is because when we look at each other's work and I would read a sentence, let's say, and I'm, we were reading in order to kind of align each other's chapters because I don't want to write about something and she's not even addressing it. So we didn't want it to be off. I would try to look at it constructively, but if I noticed that she had written something that I thought was totally unfair, then it even if it was from 10 years ago and it revealed something big to me, I'm like, oh my God. And I would just have a horrible attitude and pouty about it. And which it's not like I didn't expect that. I did, but I think expecting it when you're given, when someone says, do you want a book deal? And you think, well, there will be issues, but it doesn't seem as big of a deal to you before you start than when you're actually in it. And also going through high school, I was 16. Most of my writing happened when I was 16 and 17. So I was already very volatile, which can be good when you're writing, but also maybe not so good when it's with your mom.
Let me just say something and then I'll be happy to open it up for questions and you all can keep talking too. But Lon came to the United States in 1975. And one of the things that was interesting is that Lon and Harlan ended up writing this book when Harlan was in high school.
Yeah.
Lon's experience in high school was not a very happy one. I think that's fair. Is that fair, Lon, to say?
Yeah.
It was difficult and complicated. And so there in many ways, Lon had to revisit that in more ways than just having a daughter who's going to high school. You're actually writing about it. So that kind of interested me. So Lon, either of you want to mention something about that? And then however we get questions, I'm not clear on that. I think hands raised or whatever. And also we have some co-authors here who might have questions. So by all means, I would like to open it up to questions.
So, you know, basically, because our first attempt at writing together, in terms of you show me what you wrote and I'll show you what I wrote, did not go well. We decided not to do it because we were just fighting, and we had to bring in Ellen, our agent. And it turned out actually to be better when you don't plan so much. And that's how I write fiction too. You know, I don't really plan, and I sort of let the unconscious unravel itself. Here, it turned out that we were back and forth in a very natural and spontaneous way, which I found very surprising, but not surprising at the same time, because sometimes I think when you plan too much, it's not as, it may not work for a personality like mine. With high school, it's very hard for me because even when I think about it now, I get very upset because it was just like my first introduction to the US. I was already a freshman in high school, so I never had a kind of rehearsal that maybe middle school could have given me. And I was told that high school grades are very important. They stay with you for college and things like that. And I didn't do well emotionally in high school. I think part of it was that there were so many Vietnamese in the area that we chose to relocate in, right? So when I came to America, I came with an American who adopted me, and he was in Avon, Connecticut. And I have often thought, if I had stayed in Avon, Connecticut, where there are no Vietnamese relocating to Avon, Connecticut. It's a very small town outside Hartford. It did not have the draw that Virginia did. Virginia did for refugees is that it's right next to Washington, D.C. And I think a lot of Vietnamese refugees felt that Saigon, which was the capital of Vietnam, was the safest place, at the most protected place. So the equivalently most protected place would be DC. So everybody flocked to the Virginia area. And if I had stayed in Avon, Connecticut, and be maybe 1 or 3 Vietnamese, I think I would have had a better experience. And it might sound paradoxical, but I think in retrospect, I think that if you are a minority who is really numerically in the minority where you live, the majority population is less threatened, because it's not like you're taking over. You're not a horde, you're not a swarm, you're not this undifferentiated mass that's taking over and threatening the identity of the neighborhood. And I think you would just be kind of like exotic, and therefore more appealing. But if you're part of a huge group that descends upon this city, I think that was what made it a very hard place for me, because I've talked to friends who grew up, let's say, in a small town in Massachusetts, and they did not have the same problem I had. They were very welcome into the community. So I think that problem has been very hard for me to deal with, and Mount Holyoke really freed me from that. You know, I only had friends when I came to Mount Holyoke. And so I looked at Harlan's experience and never really understood her high school experience, even though I went through high school too. Our experiences were different in the sense that her alienation was a very different kind of alienation than mine. And because it was different, I thought there was none, because I was measuring mine as a yardstick to see whether or not she was having difficulty.
Yeah, it's always been crazy to me because I think my mom is like the smartest person I've ever met, but she also had a hard time relating to me. And I'd never come across somebody or noticed anyone who was super smart but could relate, because I feel like a lot of people become smart by kind of like empathizing in a way. And she was able to sympathize, but like relate, I don't know. For me, like writing the book in high school was probably hard because I got the book deal when I was leaving my first high school. Like it was literally the same month that I signed the contract. I left my first high school because of the alienation she's talking about. And as I got into my new high school for the second half, I started writing. And obviously I resented the first high school a lot. So it was very difficult for me to find like a good balance. I didn't want to write purely like emotional, because it is a memoir, you know, you do want to keep like a straight head, because I don't want to regret something that I said when I was, 16 and sad. But I did want to be honest. And so I was working out feeling really rejected by the popular group, whatever. And at the time it felt horrible. So writing was good because writing's always been therapeutic for me, but there's that pressure of thinking like somehow the word that I was writing a book got out, and I also had left the school, so people made it a very big deal. And I knew that the people I would reference in the book and talking about high school would probably read it, which I don't think my mom had that concern as much, writing about her high school.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, and I would still see these people like at parties, and I'm thinking like, I'm writing about you, and this is so awkward, and like dealing with myself. And so I think we both struggled with the high school aspect with the book, but in different, opposite ways.
Well, let's open it up to questions, and I can't see hands or whatever, but Robin and Megan, you can unmute yourselves, right?
I think Robin has a question.
Yes, hi. Hi, Lon. You remember when you came to my high school?
Yes.
It was so fun. When it was the very first time I was teaching AP Lit, and actually we did Lit and Lang together, I think, in that school. And Lon came and signed everybody's books. It was so exciting.
A long time ago.
Such a long time ago, I know. And I think we had a bagel party.
Yeah. I love bagels.
Yes, good. Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was very exciting for the kids and for me. It was really wonderful. So, but of course, I'm interested in Harlan and your high school experience. Renee said that you took AP Lang, and one of the things I find funny about teaching it, I'm at a French school now. I've moved on from that place, but my students take AP Lang in 11th grade, and then they take Lit in 12th grade. I don't know whether that was your experience, Harlan, but you can't remember. It was so long ago, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the things that I find funny is that they will say to me when they go into senior year, "Oh, I miss Lang so much. We never do any writing." And I find it funny because, of course, they do. They're practicing for the exam all the time. But there's something about AP language that I think probably the way a lot of us teach it, that kids get this opportunity to express themselves. So what I want to hear, of course, from you is this huge influence that AP Lang had on you and how it made you a writer. No, really, but I actually am interested in, in ways that you were encouraged in school to be a writer, because I know it's very possible to have horrible social experiences in high school, yet still connect to a teacher or a class. So that's what I'm sort of interested in.
I think beginning of 8th grade, I would say, or end of 8th grade, actually, before going into high school, I came to this realization, because 8th grade was my last good social year. Because you're at like the top of the middle school, you're like, I'm so cool, and then it's like before you hit like freshman year, and you have all these girlfriends, and you think you're going to be best friends through high school, but you're not. So everyone else thought they'd be best friends in high school, and I was looking at all of them, and I was like, I already know. I'm going to start missing you now because it's over. I've always been really pessimistic, so I started writing things down about them. Like I would write like Bella and like how she made me feel, and like just to remember. And then freshman year was surprisingly creative. I had a very like bohemian English teacher named Miss Harshman. We would sit in a circle to read together. We never were in the desk. She would handwrite like covers and put them on all our books. It was so adorable. And she made writing very creative. I think I resented a lot like the idea of, even though I understand that it's useful, is to express yourself in like academia later, but I really resented like paragraph 1 has to say this, paragraph 2, and like it was really hard for me to keep in that structure. I realized I would get like B's, which is the worst, when it was like an essay, but if it was something creative, I was perfect. It was great and easy for me. She really found a good middle ground. Yeah. So it was good for me because the memoir to me was similar to an essay because it's kind of, it's like nonfiction and it's serious, but it helped me be creative just like that teacher.
But I followed her English curriculum very closely. And the reason why I did was because all of my English classes were sanctuaries for me in high school. Mm-hmm. And so, and my English teachers were, almost all of them were especially loving.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
And I love the reading poetry and things like that. And so I finished, I looked at hers and I was very upset that she did not fall in love with any book. There was nothing that not books that were assigned. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would say, well, are you reading this?
Well, so
Are you
it depends. Well, I was always super opinionated. I was like 14. So the first thing I would do is like, I hate this, I hate that. There was one book, A Separate Piece. We read it freshman year. And, you know, it was great because the English teacher, Miss Harshman, she never made it just about like, what is the theme, which is important, you know what I mean? Like to dissect it, but she also made it about life. Like, how can it apply to you? And, you know, at the time it's hard for me to read something if I hate the main character, and I hated the main character, and I was like, oh my God, I can't go on. And so, but it was great because then her essay that she assigned was like, do you like the main character? Like, it was like she was listening and she understood like it's important for the readers to kind of either fall in love or feel a certain way. Don't just read it always objectively, you know? So that really helped. But then I think junior year, when I moved into the new school, it's the same district, but the teacher was just, he meant well, he wasn't bad, but it was all just like rhetoric, like rhetorical devices. What is the, I think he was just a super analytical guy. So nothing was emotional. It was never, how does the character feel about this? All the tests were just to check if you had read it, basically. You know what I mean? Like he printed out the Sparks Notes summary that a lot of kids use online. And he was like, write 5 things that aren't in there.
That move all the time.
Which is very smart, but the tests, but the tests were all like multiple choice, and they were like
ones.
Right, which were like, what color was his coat? And unless the color is like symbolic of something, you know, like a theme, then it really isn't what I thought I should be focused on. So I went back to resenting it, you know, junior year. And at the time I was getting into writing this book. So I'm not gonna lie, a part of me felt kind of like, you know, high and mighty, like, you know, why am I even doing this? Because it was totally opposite. I was doing something creative and like trying to figure it out with my mom. And he was kind of like, what is the second line's rhetoric device and this and that? And that was really hard. But overall, like, I do think, even though I don't love everything about how high school, like the high school curriculum, I think it depends on the teacher. Like, I think if you have a curriculum that kind of stifles kids, the teacher, if she's joyful and cares a lot, then it can really change a career for a kid. And that's great.
Yeah, because you want to be a writer now. And all of the people here are absolutely joyful, happy teachers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And they're all very creative. So thank you. Yeah. Megan, did you have a question, or are there other people with hands up or what?
I don't want to skip ahead of anyone, but I don't think I see anyone with a hand up. I'll say I'm here with my mom.
Oh.
My mom, Peggy, she flew in to help watch the kids because we're starting back to school. And I was like, oh, this is such perfect timing. We can Zoom together.
And then write a book.
And then
Oh, I can't even imagine what that would be titled.
I don't know. It was interesting because so my question has to do with the experience of writing together. And, you know, you all mentioned that in the beginning there was the tension and that sort of thing. So my question is, at the conclusion of the writing process and you know, having the book in hand, do you feel like you know each other better now? And is this a process, I guess it's a 2-part question, is this a process you would want to embark upon again?
You know, it's not so much that it's writing with her, but I would not do a memoir again because it's not my natural vehicle. I just feel much more comfortable doing fiction.
Interesting.
So if we were to do fiction together, I don't think I would object to that. Let's say, you know, I'm working on a collection of short stories, and you could write a short story, and you know, that would be fine. Or even half of a short story. I wonder what that would be like, because I've been experimenting with a short story that has point of view shift within the story, right? Like it would go
So I
from
was
first
thinking-
person to third person. And I know that it's been done, and you just have to be very careful how to do it. One could have two authors write the same short story, one first person, one third person. So I'm not against writing with her again, and especially with fiction, it would be less explosive. I think with the memoir format, it's just very, very raw.
Yeah.
And I had to straddle with her. I didn't want her to write about certain things, but at the same time, it being her first writing experience, I did not want her to associate writing with what it is you cannot write about, right? Writing should be about you're dipping into a very, very deep area of your life, which is freeing.
Mhm.
So it was a tug of war for me between don't write about this versus letting her run loose. And we did, I think I did find out things that I wouldn't have known otherwise. I didn't know, for example, how alienating high school was for her. I knew it was alienating when I had to fix it, because I was the one who had to go and find an alternative school for her right in the middle of the school year. It was around April, right? Your April, which is very hard to switch school in
Right.
April. And we experimented with all kinds of possibilities. A private school, a public school in another school district, homeschooling. I even registered me as a homeschool, which you're allowed to do in California. So I knew that, but I didn't know the emotional alienation. So I found that out only from writing the book with her.
I wonder if we had written it when I was maybe even 25, if it would have been less emotional.
Yeah.
Because I think writing about something as it's happening, it's really hard for me to keep a straight mind about it. Not that you have to when you're writing a memoir, but I think when it involves another person, it can open up a fight if you're overly emotional. I've thought to myself, maybe if I had a daughter and I was, maybe when I'm older and she's that age, it'd be really cool if I'm at a point in life where I could do a memoir with her. Maybe she could read it. That would be really beautiful. Fiction, I think I was really caught off guard when I was asked to write a memoir, because you're like 15, you're thinking like, what do I have to say about my life? So I still am curious about fiction because that's what I thought I was going to do to begin with. And the fiction that I'm working on, it's always, I think I'm similar to my mom in a way, and unfortunately, where it's hard for me to relate to people. I think I can sympathize a lot, but so because it's hard for me to relate to people, it's hard for me to write about other people and like come up with like, what would a character do or this or that, unless the character is like meant to kind of seem peculiar or different. So the fiction I write is largely based off of my own life. So I have a character I'm writing about that's literally my mom, and like it's obvious if you know her. So in a way, I'm writing another similar book, but kind of by myself and using it as an outlet. And
But you like to do script more, no?
I also would like to write a script, but it'd be like a movie based on my life and my mom, because it's really interesting to me. If I was given the chance, I think it's just because I am insecure about like prose and writing a description. Dialogue for me has always been the best because I'm very social and I like observing conversation. So a script is literally just dialogue. And I'd be curious to know if I could make a story. Yeah, if I could make a story out of just dialogue and like see how the director would deal with that.
We went to a lot of theater and she loved it. We saw Betrayal in New York. It was during a huge winter storm, and we managed to get the first row seat. And Daniel Craig was the main actor with his wife, with Rachel Weisz, I should say. Rachel Weisz was the main character with her husband, Daniel Craig. And they kept looking at her because she was just a little kid.
It's a show about an affair.
Yeah,
but
I
remember seeing it and I was like, it's crazy how they tell the story backwards, and it's about an affair, which is something that's like, you could describe what happened in 10 seconds. But the way they drag it out is so interesting. And I just thought like, that makes me want to tell stories. And just to answer the question about like having the physical book in hand, I think when I saw it, it made me think about all the fights we had. And I couldn't remember anything specific about what we had said to each other, but I remember just thinking like, at least because every teenager is going to fight with their mom. I just thought, like, thank God it came to something, like it was for something. It was like, you know, at least we have a finished product. And even though I am self-conscious, so I would never read back what I wrote, it's crazy that it's going to be like out in the world forever. And it is like a love letter to the relationship. So I hope maybe one day if I have a kid, I can do something similar.
I have to say, Harlan, many writers say they never reread. They never read. When the book comes out, they don't read it. So I think you have a sensibility of a writer already. And I have a question here from Natalie, who says, Harlan, congratulations to your incredible talent at such a young age. And then her question is, have you read your mother's books, the novels, I assume, not the law school articles? And does she influence your writing style?
I read Monkey Bridge. I think I read it when I was 15, turning 16. So it was actually like before I even knew I was going to write with her. The second one, Lotus in the Storm, I remember because I was like around 13 when it came out. I remember touring a lot with her. So I was at a lot of book readings. And Monkey Bridge did speak to me, but I think because Lotus in the Storm, I saw her write it when I was growing up, and like Monkey Bridge came out before I was born. I have a big attachment to them in different ways. There was one incident, you don't mind if I tell the story, right? At Barnes and Noble, and it was full. It was out the door. More people came than expected, actually, and it was a reading and a Q&A.
Let me just give a setting. That particular reading was in Bellaterra, which in Huntington Beach.
It's near Little Saigon.
And it's very near Little Saigon. And a lot of Vietnamese showed up. I mean, it was almost 90% Vietnamese, which is not usually the case at my book readings. They're mostly American vets and kind of like hippies, but very few Vietnamese. So this one was 90% Vietnamese, and it was shockingly, and the Vietnamese TV shows came to tape it, to run on the Vietnamese news channels in Little Saigon. You know, there are about 300,000 Vietnamese here. So go ahead.
And there was a woman who showed up, and I was like 13 again. So I kind of came with like my iPad, and I was like, I'm not even gonna pay attention. I was sitting on the floor. There wasn't even a seat for me. And I was sitting on the floor, and this woman stood up, and I think she was there originally to interview my mom after. So she was there to promote the book. And she stood up, and it was very unexpected, and she interrupts her during the reading, and she goes, basically, she said in Vietnamese that my mom was a communist sympathizer, and the book, Lotus in the Storm, seemed to be, I guess, not harsh enough, or it was kind of alluding to like being on the side of the Viet Cong. And she was like, I'm gonna walk out and everyone should walk out too. And like nobody followed her, but she just left, and it was super awkward. And I remember like,
that's never happened to me before.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, that is so cool. I wasn't even that upset. Everyone looked so confused, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world, because writing and someone liking your work is amazing, but someone disliking your work is more amazing, because it's true though. Like even if you look at like TripAdvisor or something, you look at reviews, they're mostly negative at places because people go out of their way to say when they don't like something more than when they do, most of the time. I mean, in this case not, but with that woman, she went out of her way to say she didn't like something. So I thought, like, if she did that so much, then she must have really been struck by what my mom said. And even if she misinterpreted it, like, it doesn't matter. Like, not everyone's going to interpret it correctly. And that really inspired me to write. What was the other part of the question? I think so. Yeah, my mom's writing did, and then writing the memoir shaped my writing style, because I have always been more, I think, blunt with how I write. She's more like flowery. So the way that I was writing was different already. But then on top of it, we would have to compromise like on what we were saying exactly. So if we were compromising on if I could talk about whatever topic it was, and she didn't want that, we would decide, okay, so it's important to the plot. So what we're just going to do is imply it. And I would explain what happened. If I'm recounting a story that maybe she was private about, I would just explain what happened and describe it, and hope that the reader could kind of understand what I'm implying. You know, like I would never say like, this is exactly what it is. This is this trauma term or this whatever. but I would kind of just explain it, and it was really against my personality because I was kind of just willing to say whatever I wanted, and I think it was good for me to learn how to hold back, and I think that trickles into my technique when I write fiction now.
That's great. Phoenix just said that everybody's a panelist, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have it. So
I did see a question about given the fact that our chapters are alternating, that it's possible that one person could just read, you know, each chapter. And I've had, like, interestingly, many of the partners I worked with when I was on Wall Street at the law firm, they've written to me and said, we heard you on NPR or whatever, and we got the book, and I have a whole chapter on the law firm. And one of the partners said to me, and I was just going to skim your daughter's chapter because, you know, I didn't think I would relate to it, but he found your chapters, Harlan, really illuminating. So he ended up not skipping it. But that gave me the idea that, yes, people could just hopscotch. And what happened is that it's our editors. We had two really, really good editors who, because we didn't read each other's chapters, they of course read everything, and they would make suggestions. Like, after it has been written and we've cooled down, you know, we've now turned it in, and they would come back and they would say things like, one of my editors said something that Harlan likes to bring up, which is that, remember Wendy said, when you write about your reaction to Harlan's, what did she say? Because you love that.
We struggled a lot because I always felt like, you know, when she would read my part and she'd be like, I'm so surprised that you struggled this much. Like, my first thought was like, how can you be surprised? Because I literally was crying every day. So like, I don't know why you're surprised. And I was like, get a clue. And I always said, like, I feel like you think of me as like a project, because she's very like logical and she can separate her feelings when she's working out an issue. But I thought, like, my high school thing is not like a law review. Like, we're not in court. Like I just am, my feelings are hurt and this and that. And so I felt like she wasn't relating, and she wasn't.
She said, I'm not maternal.
She wasn't.
Yeah, I'm not maternal.
So when the editor read the book, she said, you know, Lon is writing too much as if it's just a problem and an inconvenience, and she's not talking about her feelings enough. And I was like, everyone else sees it. So it would kind of be like, and then I started using like the editor's comments and arguments, like, see, everyone thinks this, and then it just got worse. So that's something.
Yeah, so the editor would stitch our work together, right? So the editors were very good in saying, well, you know, Harlan said this, and your chapter was a little bit more like this. So if you add this in, it would knit the ideas better. So, you know, it really is amazing to have good editors, because that is a separate skill.
Yeah.
It's really a separate skill. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Are there other questions here?
Yeah, I think there are two more. Castillo had one and Natalie had another one. But I think we asked one of Natalie. So maybe Castillo, do you want to ask yours? Do you want us to read it?
I can ask it. It's for Harlan. So you answered the first part of my question, which was how you developed as a writer. But as you know, I teach English to teenagers, and I'm really interested in them developing their voice and finding their voice, because I think it's really important for young people to be able to express themselves well. And I'm wondering, your experience writing this book, if you think there's any ways that a high school English curriculum could mimic some of those experiences in a way that would push student voice in the way it seems to have pushed yours.
Yeah, give me a second to think about that.
It's a good question.
Yeah. I think, in my experience at least, the moments where school, because, you know, school was very difficult for me, so it was hard for me to separate like that the education was good for me and just like hating going to school physically. So it was hard to separate. But I remember there was the certain classes where I actually felt really good about it, and it made me want to write, was the classes where the teacher, I think I said this earlier, humanized the characters beyond just beyond just like tools of the author, if that makes sense. And I think even if the book is something like Scarlet Letter, which is from a long time ago, and it addresses a time period that's not relatable whatsoever, that was in senior year, and the teacher kind of brought it into a discussion about slut shaming, which even if we don't want to talk about it, girls my age, I could see when I looked around the classroom that a lot of girls appreciated her bringing it up because it's a big problem of today. And I think it is important to talk about like the theme and how does the author express this and that, because it is a good example on how to express yourself in writing and articulate. But when she brought up, you know, the role of the man and the guy who had impregnated her and her feelings, it made it more, even sometimes I feel like the characters are objects when the teacher isn't teaching correctly, and I felt like I had to personify the objects myself in order to understand. But I think when the teacher subtly makes it relatable to the students, it makes the students feel like, oh, thank God this was brought up, thank God this book exists, and now I want to write one of my own. Even if it doesn't come in the form of like writing a long epic novel or like an article for like a magazine, it's just in general like learning to express yourself. I think English really helped me articulate how I felt. And if you're someone who's like quiet and you feel sometimes misunderstood, which a lot of kids do in high school, it's important for them to know that the characters in a book also feel the same way. And it creates an appreciation for it. It's not just like, great, I have to write this essay and I'm just gonna do it last minute and copy off my friend. Like that's how I thought I was going to approach it going into high school, honestly. And then that one good teacher made me see every character as a different thing that I thought I would. Like I see myself in the character, I see the character in myself. And the point isn't just to make everything about yourself and make the students only think about themselves. But I think for people to want to do something, they have to feel like the industry that they're contributing to contributed to them at some point. So it's good for them to think of it as something beyond just like extra credit. Like think of it as something, it depends on what book you're talking about, but like I just brought up Scarlet Letter because that was the one book I thought like, right, like I have to read this now. It was so like, it seemed, or A Doll's House, I loved that book. And it's also that story, the play, we read the play. It was the teacher had a boy read it out loud and another girl read it out loud, and it kind of came to life. And even though it was told in a totally different context and from a long time ago, it kind of reminded me of like a boyfriend that I had that totally misunderstood me and kind of dumbed me down and where I wasn't myself. And then I realized, I noticed how the writer was kind of expressing, that through Nora, the main character. And it influenced me a lot. So I think it's just important for English teachers, especially because I think already to become an English teacher, you have to be very nurturing to work with the curriculum, because I have a lot of respect for like the high school curriculum, but at the same time, like realize that the kids are going through a lot. Like it's a really hard time to be a teenager. So if you kind of work the curriculum into a personal way, I think it would really encourage the kids to want to do the same and become a writer.
You know, it's 7:30 now, and I maybe we can keep everybody for another 5 minutes or so, but I know people have their schedules. Kate, did you have a question? It just says you're the co-host. Did you have a question? No. Okay. I just didn't want to. Okay.
No, I just. You're okay. I think it just switched like settings. I'm still driving.
Okay, in Montana. Okay, but I would like to ask one last thing, and that is, can you talk a little bit about why, Lon, you chose, and Harlan, how you feel about this, the fact that you do not have a hyphenated name, you know, you don't, you know, and what family in six tones means, because there's passages in there, Lon, where you talked about the fact that you didn't raise her bilingually, where Vietnamese and English were sort of equal in the house. And if you could comment on that, I think as English teachers, that's a pretty interesting topic for us.
I do wish I had raised her, I had spoken more Vietnamese to her. I was not, you know, I didn't have anybody to speak Vietnamese with, so I would have had to make a conscious effort to speak to her in Vietnamese. But for some reason, you know, I went through a period in my life when I first had her, where I felt like I was very hyphenated. And a lot of my life has been about trying to unify the hyphens and the fragments and to connect them and make them whole. So I felt like, wouldn't it be better if she was birthed whole, as a whole identity, rather than be, you know, part this, part that, hybrid, mongrel, half and half. So I didn't do it, but now I wish I had. And of course now she has to learn Vietnamese as kind of like as an American learning a Vietnamese, rather than it being a mother language. So that I don't know if I would have done that if I were to redo things. But Family in Six Tones is about, you can talk about it with six tones, because you have six tones.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't learn it like I don't think I'd learn it if I learned it now like as an American, because I already developed the accents, and I can understand nail salon Vietnamese, because they say a lot of mean things about the clients in Vietnamese when they're sitting there. So I've kind of learned to pick that up. But I also have like a very strong connection to the language in a way, because I know it's what my mom spoke until she was forced to learn English, like before she turned the age that I was when I wrote the book. So I do have a connection there. The title is The Six Tones. It is the six tones in Vietnamese. So it has the similar alphabet to English. Some letters are pronounced differently, but sometimes there's an accent above that kind of determines how you carry your voice. And you could have one word that has the accent and one that looks the same without it, and it totally changes the meaning. So I think beyond just like the literal, you know, allusion to Vietnam with the six tones, it also shows how something so small like an accent can change the entire word. It can go from ghost to mom, mom to ghost, other, you know, like a lot of misunderstandings can happen. And it's the same way in a relationship and in anything in life, how you carry yourself, the way you word something, the way you tone, like your tone of voice, the way a conversation flows 1 minute in time or one moment can like totally change the rest of your life. You have no idea. It's the same. I think it's just about like the sensitivity in general of the world. And as for like not having a hyphen, I think a hyphen kind of like, it's such a small little like mark on the paper, but I think it means, when I see a hyphen, I kind of see it as like two different people, whereas like Van Cow feels more like a unit, and it has my mom's name in it because like Harlan, Lan at the end is the same, and then cow. So I feel.
And it's Dutch, and the Dutch don't hyphenate their Van, you know, like
Yeah.
there's Van Dusen, Van, who else? There are
I mean, my
many
dad
Van.
was Van Alstyne.
My husband was Van Alstyne. There's the Dick Van Dyke, you know, so the Van is not hyphenated anyway. But we did want to create a combination name. And in fact, Bill actually wanted, he would have been fine if she just had my name, the way a lot of children have just a male name. But I said, no, we'll be equal.
I think we have a raffle, don't we, Phoenix and Tiffany?
I think Tiff has a list of all of the attendees and will be, oh wait, Tony has a comment, but Tiff will be selecting, I think, 5 winners of books for the group. So
Okay.
Harlan.
Tiffany, you want to give her?
You went in and out, so I didn't hear.
Yeah, it was breaking up, Renee.
Oh, okay. Tony's question is, when I was growing up, my maternal grandparents discouraged me from speaking Japanese, Filipino, or so-called broken English, aka pidgin English. They were immigrants who wanted us to fit in as Americans. And Tony had also commented that she thought her students, she's in Hawaii, would really relate to the book and that they would really enjoy it. So. And Megan says, my husband's parents were discouraged from speaking Polish to him. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
It is 7:36. I am going to read a passage, and it is very quick. But I was just thinking as we were talking, there's this one paragraph in the opening that I love. So I'm going to read it. Harlan was born in the United States, far from Vietnam, but I have bequeathed Vietnam to her, whether I wanted to or not. Sometimes as a gift, sometimes as a burden, but always as a marker or an imprint. I lost Vietnam when I was 13 years old in 1975. 40 years after the fall of Saigon in 2015, my daughter herself turned 13, which for me meant the past had turned to the present, bringing itself to me in a singularly haunting act once again. Your present with her looks very, very good, Lon. I can't thank the two of you enough, and I appreciate everybody who came tonight. So absolutely, I hope you'll all enjoy the book. I wish you all the best of luck. Lon and Harlan, thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
arranging this, Renee, and allowing us to meet everybody today. It was great.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you so much for coming and making me think my opinion matters. It's really
Robin, can I read what you sent me, the text?
Oh, sure.
Robin just sent me a text. Robin has a grown daughter who's just had a new baby.
We collaborated on the American Lit book.
Yeah.
So we've done not quite what you've done, but we're very close.
Yeah. And Robin just said Harlan has the confidence of a very well-loved child.
Yes.
Oh, that's sweet.
So anyway, I couldn't resist sharing that, but thank you all so much. And Megan, I'm sorry, what's your mother's name again?
It's Margaret, but she goes by Peggy.
Oh, Margaret.
Margaret Peggy, and absolutely, I think you are a wonderful person to come and take care of children. But I think you probably have a great time. So anyway, and it's nice to meet you. I'm glad you could join us too. We may do a mother-daughter, our parent-child writing group at some point. That would be a nice.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Harlan, thank you so much. This was
Bye
so
to everybody. Thank you.
appreciate it.
All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Bye now. Thank you, Phoenix and Tiff.